Coach. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing great.
Thanks for being on. Appreciate it.
Oh, no problem at all. Happy to be with you guys.
Go ahead, Dap.
I don't know. This is, I guess, a question everybody knows, but I feel like maybe that the Big 12, the Pac-12 may have a little bit better shot with Oregon and Utah being it that maybe the Big 12 does this time. I think Baylor beating Oklahoma doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean as much. And then when you jump to the ACC, really and truly, there's nobody for Clemson to play. So it really comes down a little bit bigger to the SEC and what's going to happen between, I guess, Georgia and Alabama and LSU.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the best opportunity for any of the conferences to have two teams in would be in the SEC or the Big Ten, because if Penn State can beat Minnesota, not a great assumption. Penn State's a better football team, but Penn State has struggled on the road at times. So assuming they can do that, then the Penn State-Ohio State game would fall very much in the same category as the Alabama-LSU game. As it pertains to the, to the Big 12 against the Pac-12, I think that's a little bit more of probably going to be determined by a subjective measure in that committee room. How much credence would they give to Oregon playing Auburn in the first game? How strong do they think the Pac-12 is? I don't know what they would do. One-loss Oklahoma, one-loss Pac-12 champion. If it's Oregon, I think Oregon might have a slight edge in the room. If it's undefeated Baylor, I think that they would probably lean toward an undefeated team that had, in this case, gone through 10 Big 12 games, which would be their round-robin schedule in the Big 12 championship game. That's a pretty representative schedule, even if they don't have anything that really wows you in the non-conference.
Yeah.
We're talking with Rece Davis with College GameDay. Rece, having a week off has been great for Nick Saban, getting ready. You give him an extra week to prepare. This is a different LSU team. What are you guys looking for when you come in with this matchup?
Well, I think, all of the changes that LSU made were aimed at this game and aimed at Alabama because they couldn't beat Alabama the way they were playing. They haven't been able to win on the line of scrimmage. And I think if you ask Ed now that he thinks that they are certainly improved there, and I did ask him last week when I spoke with him for a bit, they're improved on the line of scrimmage. He still thinks they have a ways to go, but I think they're certainly much more suited to competing with Alabama this year. They can also compensate for some things by getting the ball out quickly and getting playmakers in space, things that they weren't good at the last few years. And I really think that, and I've said this publicly several times, most coaches, not all of them, there are exceptions, but most coaches are unwilling to change because they're a little bit, there are several reasons. One, they've gotten to the place where they are by following a certain philosophy that has largely worked for them. Secondly, it's admitting they're wrong, and with all due respect to you two, who I know that you two are evolved human beings, but most of us as humans, and I've found it particularly true in coaches, do not like to admit that they were wrong. So in order for Ed to do what he did on offense, he had to say, this isn't working. I'm wrong about this. I can't just run over everybody. I can't just out-tough everybody. Sometimes I've got to use my athletes better. And I think he deserves a boatload of respect for doing this. He brought Joe Brady in, and he handed the keys to the offense, and I think Steve Ensminger has been very gracious. And while retaining the title of offensive coordinator, I think I would be disingenuous if I told you that this is anything but Joe Brady's offense. So I think it's a different challenge for Alabama this year, but it's also the test, the ultimate test for LSU, because the only reason they did this is because they couldn't beat Alabama. And now they're going to find out if they can. Yeah,
Rece, in your preparation, we know you guys get to talk to Coach Saban, and you're going to ask him about Tua, and he's going to probably tell you some things on the record and off the record. How do you handle that? Because that's a big decision that Coach has got to make this week as to whether to play, what percentage he is. You guys talked to him about that. How do you handle that with Coach?
You mean in terms of whether we report what he says?
Right.
Okay. It totally is a matter of trust, Barry. I mean, and you and Wes know this. If you have a relationship with a guy, now look, it's just the rules of the game of journalism and of the coach journalist or coach-host relationship. What we do is not pure journalism, like guys like Mark Schlabach would do. There are strong journalistic components to it. You want to be journalistically sound, but you're not just out there always, digging for the next big scoop. So it comes down to, there are clear rules about, are we on the record or are we off the record? If we are on the record or you have not stipulated that you're off the record, well, then whatever you say is fair game. But I think there are also ways that we use regularly with not just this situation, but all of them. Let's say I'll give you an example. Last week, I knew that Alex Hornibrook was going to start for Florida State, okay? But I couldn't say it because of the relationship. But what was okay with all parties involved is if you give a hint. If, say things like, I would be surprised if Alex Hornibrook didn't start today.
Yeah.
Or Tommy Stevens earlier this year at Mississippi State, we knew against Auburn they were going to let him have a go at it. Didn't want anybody to know yet. And they said, don't be surprised if they don't see what Tommy Stevens has today for Mississippi. Things like that, you can kind of go in. But all of that comes down to how did the conversation go? Was it on the record, off the record? And look, I'm going to tell you, Nick's about as transparent as they come with this stuff. Now, he's not going to go out and divulge a bunch of stuff. But if it comes Friday and Tua can't go, which there's no indication up to this point that that's the case. But if it comes Friday and Tua can't go, he may. It wouldn't shock me. I'm not saying he will, but it wouldn't shock me at all if he just said he can't go. He's not going to go. We'll go with Matt. He's really good with us about stuff like that, and I think that there's a trust factor there that he knows that if he, tells us that something's off the record or we need to hold back on something a little bit, which we don't just do for Nick, we do it for Ed or Gus or whoever else we deal with. That's just part of doing your job professionally. But the coaches also have to understand if they don't stipulate and they tell us something, it's sort of like that old thing when you were a kid. There are no take backs on it.
Right.
If a guy says something on the record, he says it on the record, and that's just kind of the way it is.
That's right. So.
Well, years ago, I handed out the $7.50 every 2 weeks for laundry money, and I'm total of $15 for the month. And I understand that athletics salaries and everything else has changed, but it's kind of interesting to me to see what we're trying to do with likenesses of. And the only thing I want to say about it, certainly we don't have time for discussion on it, is that the ramifications that you have to be careful with the recruiting part of it, because that's to me is the critical part of trying to do something like this, because you end up with opportunities to give guys illegally more than they should get, and then when they decide to transfer, then you got get disgusted. You got to take that picture down. So it's got more complications to it than people think.
I don't disagree with that aspect of it, but I would say this. I think that if you go disclosure and transparency and insist on that the market will take care of it over the long term. If you have the Tuscaloosa Ford dealer and he gives, at the behest of the basketball coach, gives a guy a deal. All right. Well, then the guy comes up and, he can't play dead in the cowboy movie. He's not good. Now he didn't help move any cars. Nobody came to get his autograph.
Sure.
Nobody wanted to watch a commercial with him in it. And now the Ford dealer is going, wait a minute. I gave the guy, $75,000 and a new car for this. Wait, I'm going to wait. There will be things that will, if this ever comes to pass. And by the way, this deal the NCAA did last week is just the next chess move. This is not completely opening the door. They were saying at one moment that this is a threat to the entire enterprise, and the next moment they were going, it's okay with it. I think they do want to do something. They're just not sure what, and they also want to decide what to do and not be forced to do something by various state laws. So, this was just their next chess move, and I'm not even really being critical of them for it. This is just what they chose to do.
Yeah,
I'm a believer that the market ultimately will take care of it. First couple of years, there will be some weird circumstances. People will overspend. Guys will get in weird spots, but then they'll have to answer either to their customers or to their franchise operators or their owners or their stockholders, as the case may be. And I think the market will largely take care of it.
Yeah, but one guy told us the other day I don't know if this is true, but there's 76 billionaires in Texas and 1 in Alabama. Those billionaires can do a lot of things with that money, Rece.
Well, they can, but I mean, you show me a guy, Barry, that wants to give away a bunch of money for something that doesn't work. Yeah. And there's still scholarship limitations. There's still a limit to the number of players you can have, and there's still only so much playing time. And if you give, the same would be true. Those Texas billionaires, I'm going to tell you who will stop in the general direction of those Texas billionaires: the Harvard CEOs. What if the Harvard guy decides he wants, Harvard CEOs get together and say, hey, you know what? Let's get the 12 best guys that can get into school here for next year. Yeah. The 12 best. If they can get in school here, let's give them a $2 million, $5 million, which is, tip money for some of those guys. Let's give them we'll require them to do something. And the thing is, if we have transparency and disclosure, they can't be sham deals. They have to be legitimate deals, or else they're subject to law. And they're subject to, just taxation, which they all should be. So I think a lot of these doomsday scenarios are overblown because, we brought this up on scheduling one time, and, I brought up the point that Jimbo Fisher brings up often, and he says, hey, look, we help football by scheduling the FCS games. Now, I don't love seeing those either, and, I'm not sure we should continue to play them, but that was his point of view. And, Kirk said, well, can't we just find a way to give them some of the money? And I was like, man, if you find somebody willing to just give away money, let me know, because I'd like some of it. That's not the way the world works. So you have to do something to earn the money, and that's what would be expected for any deal that a prospective athlete would have with a business when he went into collegiate competition.
All right.
Rece, Bill at Kansas feels like he's going to fight this thing with NCAA and all the problems that they've had with Chuck Persons and so forth. We have 2 coaches who are, and I don't want to put you, you're not going to say anything that doesn't need to be said. You have a couple of coaches that do have their stuff, recorded. Are we going to pretty much drop this and try to start anew, or are we going to have some problems with people like that?
The answer to it, Coach, is I don't know, because there are people who are on recording that I absolutely 100% stand behind ESPN's reporting. It's just true. You don't have to believe it if you don't want to, but it's Mark Schlabach got it right.
Yeah.
And there are guys who are coaching who I'm shocked that they're still coaching. And I think the answer becomes I don't know. And then Billis and I were talking about this a few days ago, and he probably put it pretty well. He's like, well, if the universities don't care, then why should I? And it's kind of one of those. It's one of those things. So the answer is I don't know what the NCAA will do with Kansas. I'm actually going to see Bill either tonight or tomorrow down at the Champions Classic. So we'll see. We'll see how he's handling it. And last year he handled it just fine, and you couldn't really tell anything was going on. We'll see if that's changed this year and what it means for Kansas, who starts the season very highly ranked.
Yeah. All right, Rece. I know you got to go. When you guys rolling in to Tuscaloosa?
I'll be in Thursday. Have a couple of speaking engagements in Tuscaloosa on Thursday afternoon, and then we'll lock in and get ready for the show. And I'm going to throw out a challenge to the people there. We haven't been there in a few years. I understand that the show's been there a lot, and a lot of times among the fans, I'm always treated beautifully by the administration. I mean, administration, football staff, everybody treat us great. And the people who show up, the fans who show up, treat us great, and we're extraordinarily grateful for them. What we'd like is for more of them to show up and to make it a big-time scene that's befitting of this program, which has been the best in college football for more than a decade, and for this game, which is as good a one as we've seen in the regular season in a number of years. So hopefully they'll show up and give America the true Alabama game day experience.
So, Dad, you hear that? He's challenging you. You better be there. You better be there.
Hey, look, I'll get you VIP passes and get you front row seat up there if you show up that early.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rece.
Thank you, Rece. Appreciate it.
We'll see you soon.